Hello, friends. My name is Miss C, and I'd like to welcome you all to Miss C's Corner. This is a place where you can find videos, tips, tricks, and even some games. But today, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about something really important, and that's the difference between reacting and responding. Now, I know you're probably going to say, aren't those just the exact same thing, right? Isn't a reaction just a response? Well, sometimes people think they are the same, and sometimes some people even use them interchangeably, meaning they use one instead of the other. But they're not. They're actually very different. And to talk about a reaction and a response, we need to understand what they both are. So let's start with a reaction. A reaction is exactly what it says it is. Right there in the middle of the word is the word act. And that's what a reaction is. It's us acting on our emotions. Okay, wait a minute. So a reaction is us acting on our emotions. What does that mean? That means a reaction is what happens when we are tired, frustrated, exhausted, angry, and we just act. We don't think, we don't use logic, we don't use reasoning, we use our emotions and we just react. Now, I know this all sounds really great and wonderful, but there's an easier way to understand a reaction. And I have a special friend to help us. This is George. George is a German Shepherd. But even more than that, George is a puppy. Now, if you've ever had a puppy, you know puppies are adorable. They're fun and cuddly and wonderful, and they can also be a nightmare when they're not trained. So let's pretend that George here is our puppy. George, as a puppy, doesn't understand yet how to respond. So that means that all he does is he reacts. He barks every time anyone comes to the door. He barks anytime he sees someone come in the room. He chews the furniture. He chews on everything. And even more than that, George doesn't listen. We call him all the time and he doesn't come. George is reacting. Why? Because he's a puppy. He doesn't know any better. We haven't taught him or trained him. He's just acting on impulse and feelings. Thank you, George. All right, so let's put George down for a minute. So we have a reaction, but what about a response? A response is a little bit different than a reaction because a response has one very important step that a reaction doesn't have. When we respond, that means we take a moment to stop, we think, and then we respond. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that rather than just acting, rather than just, like George, barking, we stop. We take a moment to collect ourselves. Maybe we take a couple deep breaths. Maybe we sit quietly for a minute or two. We think about what we want. We think about what we need in that situation. And then we respond. So what's the difference? Well, a reaction uses our feelings. It uses impulse. It uses the moment. A response is so much more because a response causes us to stop, to think, and to use logic and reason to get what we want. So let's bring George back in. Maybe he can help us. All right. So George is now a little bit older. He's no longer a puppy. He's a couple weeks older now. And now we've started to train George. So rather than react, George is learning how to respond. Now this means that George only barks when somebody comes to the door and knocks. This also means George doesn't eat up the furniture anymore. Because we have taught George that an appropriate response is to wait for attention or for food. We're teaching George that before he does something, he needs to stop and respond. Thank you, George. Now, this sounds great and really easy with a dog, right? Of course it's easy with a dog. Give them a treat, they're going to learn eventually. So how do we do this with our kids? It is actually not as different as you would think. With our kids, we model appropriate behavior. So that means that we show our children what an appropriate response looks like. And the easiest way to do that is we learn how to respond appropriately ourselves. So let's imagine you're in a classroom, kindergarten, say, and one of your students is running around the classroom, running and yelling and screaming, and you've asked them multiple times to stop running. Maybe the first time you asked them nicely. Maybe you said something like, "Please don't run in the classroom, remember our class rules." Maybe the second time you've asked them to stop running again, but this time you say it in a sterner voice. So you say something like, "I said stop." Now, they still don't stop. Your student keeps running around the classroom, yelling and screaming, and finally they bump into a shelf and they knock over paint on your wonderful, beautiful new carpet. Now, we're human. Sometimes we get frustrated. Our emotions get the better of us. Now, if you were just to react to this, it might sound a little something like this. "I told you to stop running. Look what you did. You spilled the paint." Now, that's a little bit much. For a kindergartner, that can kind of sound scary, especially if you're raising your voice, especially if you're using intense language, especially if you're down at their level and yelling. Now look, no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes our emotions get the best of us and we just react. That is a reaction. We yelled. We were frustrated. We were upset. We didn't stop. We didn't think. We just reacted. Now, what if we have that exact same scenario, but instead of reacting, we respond? So again, we have our student running in the classroom, yelling, screaming, running up and down, all around. We've told them once, we've said, "Please stop running, you know the class rules." Doesn't work. So we say a second time, "If you continue to run, there's going to be consequences." They continue to run. And again, they bump into the shelf and the paint falls. So when we reacted, we yelled and screamed and got frustrated. What if instead of reacting, we respond? We take a minute, take a breath, move down to the child's level and ask what happened. Why did the paint spill? What were we doing before the paint spilled? Remember how we said we can't run in the classroom? Because when we run, sometimes accidents happen. It's okay. I understand you didn't mean to spill the paint. Let's clean it up and figure out what we can do better next time. So what's the difference between those two scenarios? The reaction, we yelled and screamed, and it was intense. But when we responded, we took a minute, took a breath, and spoke to the children as if they were adults. We got down at their level. We asked them what happened. We asked them why they thought it happened. We helped them to clean up the mess, and then we said, let's figure out a way to do this differently next time. That is an entire situation where we have modeled a correct, appropriate response. We didn't react. We didn't get intense and loud. We took a breath. We stopped. We thought about what we needed in that situation, and we responded to the child in a way that was healthy, adaptive, kind, and loving. And I know that's a lot. It's a lot to ask of anyone. I understand. I make mistakes too. I react. I don't always think. And I'm constantly learning and finding new ways to keep responding instead of reacting. So I'm going to give you all a challenge. I want to invite all of you this week or this weekend or in the coming weeks to try responding to your kids instead of reacting. Try taking a breath, taking a moment, stopping, thinking about what you need and want, and speaking to your children in a calm, kind, loving way about what went not so great the first time and how we can work together to try something different next time. Have a conversation about what it looked like this time and what it could look like next time. Have a conversation about how they could respond instead of reacting. Have an honest conversation with them about the importance of responding and stopping, thinking, and then acting. It's hard, I know. And I'm not expecting anyone to grasp this concept overnight. If you did, I would be very impressed and I would want to know your secret, because even I haven't grasped it completely. But I am inviting you to try responding where you would react. Just once, at home, or in the classroom, or even in a staff meeting with your spouse or your kids, your students, your siblings, your family. This isn't something that we just learn magically. It's something that we practice. And the more we practice it, the more we can model it for our kids. And we can show them what it looks like to respond. We can show them what it looks like to use logic and reasoning instead of just our emotions. And that is such a wonderful gift to our kids, to be able to show them how to respond appropriately. I don't know how well it's going to go. I'm not going to promise that it's magically going to make everything better, because sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I slip and I react, and I have to take a minute to remember that reacting is not going to get me what I want. It's not going to get me the thing that I need. Responding, that might get me what I want. And that might even get me what I need. So here's my challenge to you. This week, this weekend, in the coming weeks, practice a response. And if you really feel up to it, go to the comment section of this video. Tell me some ways that you've been responding. I want to hear some shout outs. I want to hear some wonderful moments, some aha moments where it made sense, where it clicked, where you tried this and it worked. I want to see the success stories. I even want to see tips. Maybe you have a great way to stop and breathe. Maybe you have a great way to kind of center yourself that we would love to hear. Maybe you're frustrated and need some help or some advice or some extra tips. I want to know. I want this video to be interactive. I want this corner to be your space to learn. So use the comment section. Let me know how it goes. And most of all, make it a great day.